Hi guys, and welcome back to the channel. So today we're back in the car workshop. Been a while since I've been in here, so we've been concentrating all our time on the heavy wrecker stuff. So today we're going to be having a bit of a mess with this one, and the plan for this one is, previously I've took the fuel tank out. This car's been stood for 20 plus years around that time, so obviously there's been a lot of build up of rust into the fuel tank. So I actually removed the tank a while ago, started to clean it up, found a little hole in the top there. I have flushed this tank out, cleaned it all out, got rid of all the fuel, all the vapours and stuff in there, so this should now be safe. This has been stood now for a good 2 months at least, possibly longer, without any fuel in the tank, so any fumes should have exhausted out of this tank by now. This should be safe to weld. So plan for today, we're going to try and get this blob, I'll weld a blob on there even, and finish these piping off for the breathers. It's just a couple of pipes that I need to add. I've done some of this already. Then we're going to get the tank treated, painted, hopefully get that back under the car. The other issue with this was because there's been so much rust in the tank, we did previously try to start this, and I think it sucked some rust out of the tank and actually jammed it up into the fuel pump, and the fuel pump stopped working. So although we did get it to sort of fire up vaguely, didn't completely run, didn't fire up and run on its own steam, so to speak. So hopefully today we can get that tank in, get the fuel pump on, and hopefully try and get this running. The issue I'm going to have here is this had the old style of fuel pump on it originally, which is a preset pressure. I'm now having to put a Facet Gold Series pump on it, which the pressure I would imagine out of that pump is going to be a little bit more. This isn't actually fitted with an external pressure regulator, fuel pressure regulator. I do have one, but the challenge is going to be this car is actually on braided hoses that run through the car. There's not an awful lot of room down there where that goes into the bulkhead, so somehow I need to figure out a way of piping up an external fuel pressure regulator onto this car so I can set the pressure. Otherwise it's just going to flood the carbs, fill with fuel, and obviously not going to run right, and obviously we risk setting it on fire. So before we start, I need to get this car out of the workshop. I'm going to roll this one out, and then I need to pull this one out, put that one back in, and then put this at the back. Obviously we're messing around with fuel here. This car's not been ran for 20 plus years, so we don't want anything to go wrong. If it does go wrong, I'd rather it go wrong out there and go wrong in the middle of the workshop, surrounded by other cars, tools and equipment and so on. So fingers crossed that won't happen, but obviously for safety reasons we are going to push this to the back. So that's where we're going to start. I will be coming back to this car shortly as well. It's just obviously not had time to do very much with doing the heavy stuff, so it's obviously bank holiday weekend. I've got a couple of days free, so I'm going to start to crack on, hopefully get this one running. This car is going to be going for sale once I've got it running and driving, and I've got a few bits and bobs done on it. Oh, we also need, sorry, one thing I forgot about, there's a couple of patches need welding in this boot floor, you can see up there. So we are going to weld a couple of patches in this boot floor before we put that tank in, and then obviously my tank straps are here to mount the fuel tank back under that car. So I'm going to crack on guys, going to get some stuff shuffled around, and I'll be back with you all soon. done that, we have put a couple of patches in the boot floor. I've just masked off this area just around the actual spare wheel well. I put a patch in there and I put a patch in there, and I've just gone around it with some seam sealer just to make sure it's nice and watertight, there's no pinholes in that weld. I have zinc ridge primered this before I put this satin black on, so once this is dry, obviously I'm going to peel this masking tape off and I'll just leave that black for the time being. If somebody wants to paint it white again, that's entirely up to them. There's a bit here that needs a bit of a weld as well, there's a small hole there, so I'll probably deal with that over the next couple of weeks if the car's still here. Just got the heat gun going there to dry this paint off a bit quicker. I've also, let me see if I can jump down here to get these ladders, one sec. So I've cleaned it out up underneath the car. You can't really see much, guys, because it's pretty dark, but I've given it a bit of a clean up, and I've just put some paint under here as well where the fuel tank's going to sit. So obviously underneath the fuel tank area is also protected. There is a little bit of surface rust on here, but nothing major. It's quite solid really. That back panel, as far as hatches go, again just a bit of rust coming through, but it is all solid, completely solid under there. It's not actually a bad car really underneath. It's a couple of little bits and bobs, again a bit scabby, but nothing too major. I've noticed obviously panhard rod's bent there. I don't know whether that's intentional because the car's been lowered just to pull the axle over a bit, because obviously on the mantas when you lower them and they come down it pushes the axle over to one side. So I'm assuming that's been put in there to allow to bring the axle back into line. Obviously what we do when we do this is we'll cut that panhard rod and we'll fit a turnbuckle so it's actually adjustable. So that's really what this wants. I do have some spare panhard rods, so I'll probably make one of them for this car again if it's still knocking about. If it doesn't sell, I'll just keep plodding on and doing bits and bats in the meantime until it's sold. So let me get back up here, guys. As I was saying earlier, I do need to fit a fuel pressure regulator on this to run these carbs, because the original fuel pump that was on there was just one of the small square little facet types, which doesn't really give a lot of pressure. I think it works at I don't know what it is, 10 psi or whatever it is. Obviously I fitted a Gold Series pump, which is a lot bigger, so that is now going to need regulating. The problem I've got is this car has had braided fuel lines put on it all the way down, so this is then ran into the bulkhead and then the fuel lines actually run inside the car. So I'm not going to be able to mount a fuel pressure regulator up here, so I am going to have to mount this under the car for the time being just to get it running. I'm not messing about trying to disconnect and reroute all this just for simplicity. For now I will mount it under the car somewhere, pipe into that, so then the fuel is regulated coming forward to these carbs so it doesn't flood it to death. So that's where we're up to. I'm going to wait for that tank to dry off. Once that's dried, I'm then going to bang it back under the car, get it piped up, and hopefully we can get this thing started. First time in 20 years. Right guys, so this is the start of another morning on the old Mancona. Got the fuel tank back in here to give it a bit of treatment yesterday. Slung a bit of stone chip on it, obviously cleaned it up, primed it and all that before. I've run some new breather pipes in here, and I've put the stack pipe or sender unit, whatever you want to call it, back in the tank and resealed that. Obviously I've cleaned all the filters out. The tank has been flushed and cleaned out inside as well, so that's nice and clean now, ready to go back on the car. I've also shot blasted, primed and painted the tank straps. I've got some bolts out here. Unfortunately, well, these are the original bolts, but one of them snapped when I was removing this tank a couple of months ago, and that is actually captivated into the boot floor. Obviously welded the boot floor up yesterday, nothing special. Just put some seam seal around the patches to make sure it's watertight, as I've already mentioned. Now, you see there is a hole that's normally a captivated hole. but obviously that is the one that snapped, so I've had to grind out the bolt from there, so now I can put a nut and bolt straight through the boot floor to hold that tank strap. So we're not so far off now, guys. We've got these ready to go on, so I'm going to try and get the camera down the pit somewhere for you guys if I can, and try and get some footage of the tank going back in and repiping it into the fuel pump. I still need to figure out a way of putting a pressure regulator into this. I know it's a simple job to fit a pressure regulator, but the problem is, as I've already explained, there's not really many places for it to go on this car because the piping has been routed into the car along the floor, and then on the engine it is braided hoses from the carbs. So you've got the braided hose running down this side, braided hose running down that side, which then goes into one central section there, and just about see that it dips down and goes through the bulkhead via that fitting down there. So as you can see, there's no room up here to get a pressure regulator. Obviously these are on nut and bolt fittings, so I can't just put a piece of pipe in there and join it to a pressure regulator very easily. So for the time being, I'm going to have to stick the pressure reg under the car somewhere, so I need to figure out where that's going to go and get some pipe work into that. So let's crack on, guys. Let's get this tank under and let's see if we can wake this from its 20-year sleep. Right guys, a bit of a struggle there, but we managed to get the tank on, all fitted, got it piped up. You can see up there, a bit of a struggle. I've managed to get the fuel pump in, which is a facet pump up here, and then I've managed to get a pressure regulator in up there as well. This is temporary, guys, don't worry, it's just so I can get the car started. Much easier having a car in the unit that drives rather than trying to push it in and out when you need to move stuff around. So the aim of the game is just to get this started. I have used Coldam R9 hose. Again, the piping isn't ideal. I have had to use a temporary pipe here as well because I didn't have any new pipe fat enough to fit the outlet from the tank, so that's just gonna have to do us for now, but that's in for the time being, guys. Hopefully that should work. I've just got to get a blank, if you can see that there's a little takeoff here in the tank that should be the return. This must be a GTE tank. Obviously carb engine doesn't need a return, so I'm just going to blank that off just to stop fuel gushing out of there, and we put some fuel in the tank. Again guys, this is not a restored car, so it's not mint underneath, but just give you a quick look under there while I'm under it. As you can see, considering this thing has been stood for 20 years, it's pretty solid in all the normal places where they rot. Normally all rot on up here, it's all pretty good. Floors are all pretty good. See, it's got a full set of billies, it's got rear disc conversion. The caliper has been removed from this side, I'm not sure why. It was like that when I bought it, so I need to get that, have a look at that, see why it's been removed, and if there's nothing wrong with it I'll put it back on. Also get some pads in it, just so I've got some brakes. You can see it's got a custom stainless exhaust on this all the way down, which branches off. It's a really nice exhaust actually. I'll try and show you as far down as I can. But the floor pans are pretty good. Chassis rails pretty good. It has started to swell a little bit up at the swan neck area, right up there as it dips under the front, but I've seen much worse. and it's probably MOTable to be fair, as is, so pretty pleased with that really. It's quite tidy under here, easy project for somebody if it does sell. You see the sills are all mint under there, there's no scabs or anything. Again, normally rot up in these corners, just surface rust, all solid. And again up there. So yeah, pretty pleased with that. Now then, I'm going to get this blank fitted on this tank before I forget. I'm going to shoot to the petrol station, going to get a couple of cans of fuel. Let's fuel this thing up. Fingers crossed, let's see what happens, see if she fires up. Be back with you soon. Right guys, so we've got a couple of cans of fuel there ready to go. I'm just going to put one can in first and obviously check for any leaks. Then what I'm going to do is, once I've got both cans of fuel in and obviously there's nothing leaking around the tank, I'm going to prime the system up. I'm just going to activate the fuel pump, get some pressure in the system, knock it off, then I'm going to check for any leaks before we try and start this up. Always get a little bit nervous about starting cars like this when they've been stood for so long, you never know what could happen. So we're going to do as much as we can, check as much as we can, just for safety reasons before we try and fire this up. Right guys, so we've got one can of fuel in there. Let's just have a quick look underneath, make sure there's nothing leaking as yet. Make sure we're happy there's no leaks around the tank before we start to pressurise the system up. All looks pretty good, nice and dry under there. No drips. Now we won't see any drips from anything going forward anyway, because the fuel line actually runs inside the car. So just checking around this tank area, up into the fuel pipes and stuff up here. All looks pretty good so far. Right, so that's both cans of fuel in. I'm just going to jump back down the pit now and have another quick look. We've got another can in. Right, so all looking good so far guys. Let's jump in the car, let's fire the fuel pump up, get some pressure in the system and see if it holds its pressure and doesn't leak. Just noticed that the throttle feels a little bit sticky, so what we're going to do is spray a bit of mech oil in here and all these linkages, just make sure everything is as free as it can be, so we don't want that sticking when we fire it up for obvious reasons. I get a little bit of smoke off this when we fire it up obviously, because it's going to burn a bit of crap off, but I can live with that. I'd rather have that than throttle sticking. I think that's all of it guys. Let's have a feel, see how that is now. That's better. Much better. Right, let's crack on. Right guys, so on this car, the previous owners actually wired the fuel pump into the fog light switch. Now that took a little bit of finding when I first got this car, because obviously I couldn't activate the fuel pump when I first got it. I have previously tried to start this car, but the fuel pump had packed up with rust, so I couldn't get it to run for that reason, which is why I've took the tank off, refurbed the tank and put a new fuel pump on it. So that is actually the fuel pump. You know, just picking fuel up there now. So let that run a second. It's gone a lot quieter now, so we know the fuel pressure is getting up there. I'll knock that off. Let's have a quick look. I have took the top of the carbs off as well, just so I can see what's going on inside here. Right, there we go guys, so we've now got, you're seeing there, we've now got fuel entering carbs, so we know we've got the pressure up there. So we'll have a quick look underneath. Any dripping? No dripping under there. Looks pretty good so far guys. Right, I'm going to get the tripod set up. Got a couple of fire extinguishers at the ready. Fingers crossed. Again, let's go to fire this up. So I'm just going to set the camera up at the front, let's see what happens. Right, here we go guys, I'm a little bit nervous, I'm not going to lie. Well, it runs. A little bit messy, but it hasn't been run for 20 years or so. So I'm going to have a little dial about now, try and turn the idle up a little bit, try and get it to tick over on its own steam. Have a little play around, check all these points and stuff, the dizzy, see how they're looking, make sure they're clean enough, bearing in mind it's still on the old plugs and everything this, so there we go, but that sounds like a bit of a beast. Happy days. Let's have a mess about, see if we can get it to run a little bit better. ticking on over on its own steam there now, guys. Happy days. That was not bad for a car that has been stuck for 20 years. I thought it was going to be a lot harder to get started than that, I'm not going to lie. Again, don't forget it's still on all its old plugs and everything yet as well. Right guys, so there we have it. She runs. Quite a few little bits and bobs to do on this car. Plan for this is get it running, get it driving, get everything working, possibly bang it in for an MOT, see if I can get a ticket on it, and then just sell it. Basically everything working, needing a paint job. I don't have time to paint it. Chances are when I drive it I probably will want to keep it, like I do with them all. There is some rubber bushes that have deteriorated on the gear stick down there. There should be some rubber bushes in that, as you can see. I have got bushes for that, I just need to put them in. Door seals need to go back on. It needs a really good clean inside. Obviously the gaiters, all the dashboard panels need to go back on, so I'll get all that done. Other than that guys, I mean the car's pretty much a complete car. Now runs and drives, that's quite a relief. No fire extinguishers needed, thank God. So there we have it. After 20 years, it's alive. So that's going to be it for this one, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give us a thumbs up, give us a share. Don't forget to hit subscribe to keep up with future videos on our channel. And I'll see you all on the next one.